Welcome to this explainer. Look out your window, hit the grocery store, or honestly, even just glance at the dog snoozing on your rug. We tend to think of all these things as just nature, right? Well, the reality is actually far more fascinating. For thousands of years, humans have been quietly acting as biological architects, taking total control of biology to shape the living world around us to fit our exact needs. Today, we're exploring the incredible and sometimes kind of controversial science of selective breeding. To understand how we've engineered the world, we'll cover 5 chapters today: defining selective breeding, plant breeding, the dangers of inbreeding, animal breeding, and finally, natural versus artificial selection. Let's get right into it with Section 1, defining selective breeding, taking control of biology. So, what does it actually mean when humans decide to just bypass the slow crawl of nature to engineer very specific biological outcomes? At its core, selective breeding, which you'll also hear called artificial selection, is wonderfully straightforward. It's simply the process of selecting individuals with desirable characteristics and intentionally breeding them together. The entire mechanism relies entirely on human choice. Instead of survival of the fittest, it's survival of the most useful. We decide what traits we want, and we essentially play matchmaker to get them. Okay, let's dive into this actual biological loop, which happens in 4 distinct steps. First, you select the individuals from a population that have the exact traits you're looking for. Second, you breed them together. But, and here's the crucial part, it doesn't stop there. Because genetics can be notoriously unpredictable, not all the offspring are actually going to show those desired traits. So step 3 is sorting through that next generation, finding the offspring that did inherit the traits you want, and breeding them together. And finally, step 4, you repeat this whole shebang for many successive generations. I absolutely want to highlight this specific note straight from our source material because it acts as a perfect myth buster. A lot of people think you just breed a big cow with a big bull and boom, you've got a brand new breed of giant cows. No way. As this tip points out, selecting 2 parents, breeding them, and just stopping there is not selective breeding. True artificial selection is a deliberate marathon. You've got to repeat it over and over until you have a new breed that will reliably show those traits in every single offspring. Moving on to Section 2, plant breeding, the Brassica story. Let's take this concept out of the abstract and straight into the produce aisle. Why do we selectively breed plants in the first place? Well, a rapidly growing human population demands some serious biological upgrades. We breed food crops for disease resistance, so entire harvests aren't just wiped out overnight. We breed for increased crop yield to feed way more people using less land. We select for weather hardiness, creating crops that have absolutely incredible drought tolerance. And of course, we cater to our own senses, right? Breeding for better tasting fruits and cultivating large or unusual flowers purely because they look good. And this brilliantly illustrates just how powerful the process can be. Right in the center, we have the original wild brassica plant. Honestly, it basically just looks like a standard leafy weed. But by applying selective breeding to different parts of this single plant over many generations, humans created an entire aisle of distinct vegetables. It's like a giant puzzle. By selecting plants with the largest terminal buds, we got cabbage. By focusing on the flower cluster, we engineered cauliflower. Selecting for lateral buds gave us Brussels sprouts. We turned the flowers and stems into broccoli, the stem into kohlrabi, and the leaves into kale. Literally 6 entirely distinct vegetables, all dragged out of the genetics of one wild plant simply by choosing what to breed. It really is a marvel of human ingenuity. Section 3, the dangers of inbreeding, the biological complication. Now, before we pat ourselves on the back and celebrate our total mastery over biology, we have to ask a pretty critical question. Is selective breeding always safe? When we narrow our focus down to just a handful of perfectly tailored traits, what are we accidentally leaving behind? Well, the answer lies in the dangers of inbreeding. The problem pops up when we only breed the absolute best plants or animals together. Often, these top-tier individuals are pretty closely related to each other. When you breed closely related organisms, you drastically reduce the gene pool. In biological terms, this means a reduction in the number of alleles, which are just the different versions of genes floating around in a population. And when that gene pool shrinks, 2 very dangerous things happen. First, there's a vastly increased chance of the organism inheriting harmful genetic defects. Second, the entire population becomes highly vulnerable to new diseases. Why? Because with fewer alleles circulating, there is a much lower chance that any natural resistant alleles are actually present to fight off a new pathogen. If a disease hits one, it can very likely wipe out all of them.
All right, Section 4, Animal Breeding, Wolves to Dogs.
Shifting our focus over to the animal kingdom, our motivations for breeding are super tied to our own needs. We breed cows, goats, and sheep specifically to maximize milk or meat production. We breed chickens to lay uncommonly massive eggs. We breed sheep for high-quality wool and horses for a lightning-fast pace. But we also breed for behavioral traits. The gentle, loyal nature of a domestic dog isn't some happy accident. It's a carefully curated genetic feature that we've engineered over millennia. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the biological transformation. It is staggering. Every single breed of dog you're looking at, from the tiny pug to the towering Great Dane, is descended from the wild wolf. Over thousands of years, humans selectively bred wolves with the gentlest natures and the most useful physical traits. And to dodge those exact dangers of inbreeding we just covered, smart breeders will often use several different parents that all possess the desired characteristics. This ensures that they don't have to breed direct siblings together in the next generation, which helps maintain at least some variety in the gene pool while still moving toward a specific dog breed.
Finally, Section 5, Natural versus Artificial Selection, the macro view.
Let's zoom out for a second and compare our human engineering with the original designer, nature itself. The contrast here is stark. Natural selection occurs on its own, completely driven by the environment. It results in populations with features that are best adapted for actual survival in the wild. And crucially, it usually takes an incredibly long time to unfold. Artificial selection, on the other hand, only occurs through direct human intervention. It results in features that are useful to us. Think of a pug's flat face or a chicken's massive eggs, which frankly are not necessarily useful for the survival of the animal itself. And because we're intentionally forcing the breeding of specific traits, artificial selection takes far less time. We've essentially put evolution on the fast track. So what does this all mean? It leaves us with this final thought. Through selective breeding, we've rapidly molded the natural world to serve our exact needs, magically transforming wild weeds into food and wild wolves into companions. But as we continue to shrink gene pools in pursuit of the perfect yield or the perfect pet, at what genetic cost to the future? The power to design nature is entirely in our hands, but the massive responsibility of managing its fragile genetic foundations is a challenge we're going to be navigating for generations to come. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the world around you, and as always, keep learning.